Welcome back everyone to the Cheltenham Countdown YouTube channel for an episode today where it's going to be slightly different. I'm going to highlight every single handicap race at the Cheltenham Festival today. Obviously we have the entries made tomorrow, so I want to be slightly one step ahead of the game and have every handicap race in mind this afternoon on this episode, barring one that I've already selected a horse in the race for. So I've already selected a horse in the Pertemps final so far this season. I've got Highland in that race, as you know. I backed him back in November, or no, back in last month, I think, back in January, as my 8th anti-post pick. He was a 25-1 shot at the time. It's now gone a bit higher in price to 33-1 following his race on the weekend, but nonetheless, we still go with Highland for the Pertemps. So today, though, I'm going to look at the other 8 handicap races at the festival with 4 horses in mind for each handicap race that I think have a good chance on the day. Whether or not they get entered tomorrow or not is something to wait for. But nonetheless, I won't be selecting 4 horses in each handicap race on the day, but I will be discussing 4 that I think have a chance of winning or placing as well in the race on today's episode. My selections for Cheltenham, as you know, will be discussed and shown in a separate video to this, and it will be posted on Twitter closer to festival week. So let's begin now with the first handicap race of the Cheltenham Festival, which is of course the Ultima handicap chase. It's run on the open day over 3 miles and a furlong, and there'll be 20 fences to be jumped in all. My history in this race isn't too bad. I backed the winner of the Ultima twice before. I managed to pick out Beware the Bear in 2019, and I backed Corach Rambler last year. So the Ultima handicap chase is the first, like I said, the first handicap race of the festival. Qualification for the race, you have to be 5-year-olds and over. In terms of last year's race, the ratings were covered from 155 to 129. The top rated horse carried 11 stone and 9 pounds. Obviously last year's winner, Corach Rambler, he was rated 146 at the time. He carried 11 stone and 5 pounds. The 4 horses that I'm taking a look at in this race to begin with is Victorino. He's the first horse I'm going to take a look at. He's trained by Venetia Williams. He ran at Ascot on the weekend and finished 4th. That would have been his 3rd win at the track this season had he claimed victory, had he won that race. He ran at Cheltenham on Trials Day this year and didn't really perform at his best, although that for me was over, I think, an inadequate trip for the horse. I think he needs a lot further. He needs a 3-mile race, a strongly run 3-mile race. That race on Trials Day was over 2 miles, 4 furlongs. Like I said, he ran at Ascot prior to Cheltenham and won his 2 races in November and December, and his current market price for the Ultima is 33-1. So it's not too bad of a price if you're looking at an anti-post play. Obviously, all these handicap races, I'll be looking at prices non-run and no bet. So just bear that in mind. The second of the 4 horses I want to take a look at in the Ultima is the first Irish horse I'll take a look at. That's Mala Mission. Whether or not he will run in this race, again, remains to be seen. But like I say, he comes from Ireland, who really don't have a particularly good record in this handicap at the festival. But this horse was tanking along when falling 2 out in last year's National Hunt Chase on the opening day of the festival. He was 4 lengths clear at the time before his race was eventually stopped. He also finished 2nd in this year's Coral Gold Cup, where he was prominent for most of the way. Like I said, he may be too highly rated for this race, and he is entered for the Grand National in April, which is his main target for the rest of the season. The 3rd horse is Affordale Fury in this Ultima chase I want to take a look at. 2 chase starts for him so far in his career, 1 victory. He came 2nd in last season's Albert Bartlett. That was a career best run from him, finishing 1 length behind the winner Stay Away Faye for Paul Nicholls. He's a 6-year-old from the Noel Mead stable, and has recently been taken out of the Brown Advisory Novices Chase at Cheltenham. So it really has to be a handicapped race for him. Otherwise, I don't think he'd be running in Cheltenham this year. His best price at the moment is 33 to 1 for this race. And if he gets entered, he could break the Irish record in this race, like I said, and could become close to winning for Ireland in this contest. We wait and see whether or not he gets entered tomorrow. And lastly, the last horse to note in this race, I think, is a horse called Bow to Greatness. This horse is owned by Harry Redknapp, and he's trained by Ben Pauling. Currently in at 133. He is entered at Kempton on Saturday in the 3-mile handicap chase there. I think a step up in trip is what he really wants. Ran in the plate last year at the Cheltenham Festival, and I felt that was too quick for him. The race was run at a rapid pace, and I think he needs a step up in trip to be able to relax more and horses to aim a stronger pace at. He then came second at Aintree over 3 miles in a furlong, which was a very good run from him. Finished behind Midnight River for the Skeltons that day. This season, he was pulled up in the Coral Gold Cup, and he finished 5th on Trials Day at Cheltenham. He definitely needs to step up in distance again, in my opinion, and I feel this race could suit him. So the 4 horses I've taken a look at in the Ultima Handicap Chase are Victorino for Venetia Williams, two in Ireland, the horses are Mala Mission and Affordale Fury, and another horse trained in England called Bow to Greatness. What I'll do, I'll note these 4 horses at the start of each clip in terms of the handicap race I'm taking a look at, and then you can decide or not whether you want to listen to their cases. And obviously we find out tomorrow whether or not these horses will be entered for these particular handicaps. Handicap race number 2 now, which is the Boodles Juvenile Hurdle, which again will be run on the opening day of Cheltenham this year. The qualification for the race is for 4-year-old juvenile hurdlers. Last year's race in terms of ratings, the top rated horse was 142, who carried 11 stone and 12 pounds, all the way down to a horse rated 119. Last year's winner, Jazzy Matty, was rated 125. I managed to pick him out on the day as my winner. The 4 horses I'll take a look at in this particular handicap section will be Batman Girac, who is trained by Willie Mullins. The second horse will be a horse called Roaring Legend. Then one trained by Gordon Elliott called Woodo. And the last horse will be a horse called Eagle Fang. So they're the 4 horses in this section I'll take a look at. If you want to listen, I'll listen to their cases. That's down to you. The first horse, like I said, Batman Girac, trained by Willie Mullins, who is owned by Simon Muir and Isaac Swade. He's had 4 runs over hurdles in his career so far, 2 in France and 2 in Ireland. He went to Willie Mullins' yard last year, and first 2 runs were in graded company at Ferryhouse and Leopardstown. So they obviously thought, the trainer thought highly of him by pitching him into those races where he finished 7th and at Ferryhouse and 4th in the Grade 2 at Leopardstown respectively. He's now rated 133 following those runs, which is near enough perfect, I think, for him going towards the Boodles. Willie Mullins has never won this race though. He's had 4 placed horses from 19 runners, but maybe this horse could break his duck. And he's been scratched recently from the Triumph Hurdle, so he should be going to the Boodles, if anything, in the festival if he is to run at Cheltenham. Like I said, the second horse is called Roaring Legend. This horse, formerly on the flat, is now with trainer Ollie Murphy and has had 2 runs to date, both finishing 2nd. His 2 races have been this calendar year in January and February, where he's lost to 2 good Paul Nicholls juveniles. They were both well backed on the day as well. So he's entered to run a market raising tomorrow with Sean Bowen in the saddle. I think he'll go well there. I'm going to keep an eye on him, how he runs tomorrow, again at market raising. Current best price for the Boodles for Roaring Legend is 16 to 1. He could be a decent each way shot on the day. And one last thing to note is that this horse's sire is the late great Roaring Lion, who was a prolific flat horse winning 4 Group 1s before he sadly died early in his career. The third horse I'm taking a look at is Woodo. Unbeaten since joining Gordon Elliott's yard from Sir Michael Stout, winning all her 5 races this season. That has earned her an official rating of 128 and has won 2 races in the UK, both at Doncaster and Newbury. She's been well backed in her last 4 races, which included 2 listed races for juvenile fillies. and beat a horse called Max of Stars twice in second. Her price in the market reflects her very good season, as she is roughly 7/8 to 1 in the market at the moment, roughly around those prices currently. I'd give her a good chance, especially with Gordon Elliott's record in the race. He's won the race 4 times. So just bear in note the trends if you're looking at these handicap races, which trainer is more successful in the race, and how their record in the race has panned out. The last horse in this section is a horse called Eagle Fang, trained by William Durkin, who some people may not be familiar with. However, this horse has run 5 times since coming from Keith Dalglish's yard, and ran consistently well, coming in the places in 4 of his 5 races. So his only blip came at Leopardstown on Boxing Day, where he was a 66 to 1 price. Rated 125 now. He beat some nice juvenile types in his last race at the beginning of the month. I do feel if he was trained by a higher profile Irish trainer, he may be closer to the top of the Boodles juvenile hurdle market. Handicap race number 3 will be the first handicap on the Wednesday, I should say, the second day of the festival, the really competitive Coral Cup. The qualification for this race is for 4-year-olds and up. Last year's race had ratings from 151, who carried Lenstone £9, down to 134. Last year's winner, Langadan, was rated 141, which incidentally, he is the same this time around. He's carrying Lenstone 4. He carried Lenstone £4 last season. The first horse I'll take a look at in this particular handicap is a horse called No Ordinary Joe, who I'll mention this horse later in the episode as well. He'll have another race in mind that I think he could go to Cheltenham towards the end of the episode. So No Ordinary Joe, he's owned by JP McManus and trained by Nicky Henderson, who is the most successful trainer of the race. An 8-year-old that has run twice at Cheltenham before and finished really well in those races, including second place in last year's Martin Pipe. Officially rated 140, he's run twice this current season and hasn't really been seen to best effect. Maybe connections seem to want to lower his mark slightly for a specific target, perhaps in the spring. That may be the case with Nicky and JP, as they like to target certain handicap races at the Cheltenham Festival. Next horse is a horse called North Lodge. Trainer Alan King has committed to keeping him over hurdles this season, and especially in 2.5 mile handicap races. A previous Grade 2 winner at Cheltenham and third in a Grade 1 at Aintree. He's only had 5 starts in his whole career, so he's very unexposed, I feel. Currently rated 142, which will be £1 more, like I said earlier, than what Langadan had when he won the race last year. He's definitely very much a progressive horse, in my opinion, and I really think he hasn't reached his full potential so far. The next horse is a horse called the Wall Park. He joined Gordon Elliott's yard last year. This 6-year-old has won all bar one of his races. His latest race was in October at Limerick in a listed novice hurdle on heavy ground, and finished third, but a fair distance behind a Willie Mullins horse who is favourite for the Albert Bartlett this year in High Class Hero. So the form is quite rock solid with him this campaign. Gordon Elliott has got a good record in the race as well, winning it 3 times in recent years. And I think this horse may be rated in the low to mid 130s, which might sneak him into this year's Coral Cup. And then the final horse I'll take a look at in the Coral Cup section is Shanbally Kid. Shanbally Kid is rated in the low 130s, officially 133. And I think after the UK handicapper adds a few extra on top, he may be up to 130 to 140 perhaps. And that should be enough to hopefully get him in. Trained by Willie Mullins, who's won the race once. This horse definitely needs 2.5 miles, in my opinion. If you look at his form, he doesn't stay 3 miles for now. Therefore, dropping him back in trip should suit. At the moment, his price for the race is 25 to 1, non-run and no bet. And getting 5 places now, that may not be the worst each way bet. I think it could be thereabouts if ridden prominently. The next handicap to note and discuss now is the Grand Annual Chase, which will be run again on the Wednesday. Qualification is 5-year-olds and over. Last year's race, again, in terms of ratings, highest rated was 155, who carried 12 stone, all the way down to 139. Last year's winner, Muscada, who was rated 142, carried 11 stone and £1. The 4 horses in this section will be 3 from Ireland and 1 from the UK. The 3 in Ireland begin with a horse trained by Willie Mullins called Saint-Oir. I truly believe this horse could end up being a big graded horse in a handicap at Cheltenham for Willie Mullins and JP McManus. His last 9 races have all been graded races, so he's very consistent at the top level. Now rated 150, which is down to a low mark for a chase race. He's currently at the top of the market anti-post. Definitely a horse to consider for the race, as he also has a good record around the track, finishing 3rd in a champion hurdle and an Arkle, as well as winning a county hurdle. Has only won 1 race though over fences, which would be a concern, which was back in 2022. The next horse, again trained by Willie Mullins, called Oh My Lord, and owned by JP McManus again. This horse is a 6-year-old and is yet to win over fences. Ran at the festival last year in the Ballymore and finished down the field. Think he is an interesting type for this race. This trip will be much to his liking, and as 2.5 miles just stretches him, I think. He will need to improve from his previous runs, but maybe an each-way player for the handicap at Cheltenham. His best price now, non-runner, no bet, is 20 to 1, and I think he'll be better over time. The 3rd horse is the first UK horse in this section, called Liberty Hunter. 16 to 1 for the race right now, and won at Cheltenham already this year, beating a good horse from the Nigel Twiston-Davies stable. He may well be a well-handicapped horse. Rating is 139, £7 higher than after winning at Cheltenham on New Year's Day. He is an 8-year-old trained by Evan Williams and might want a bit of soft in the ground if he goes to this race. Based on last year's ratings, he would just get in as well, right down the bottom of the weights. And this could be a top training performance if he goes there. So just bearing in mind Liberty Hunter, I have noted him in this section. The final horse is the last of the Irish final orders. Trainer Gavin Cromwell is doing very well this season with his horses at Cheltenham. Finished 5th in this race last year off a mark of 150 and now currently rated £4 less. He could run another good race this time around. His last race was at Cheltenham in November and he ran no sort of race that day, was always behind and never got going. Only an 8-year-old though, I do think he can run another decent race in the Grand Annual, and especially with trainer Gavin Cromwell, who is a very shrewd operator. We're halfway through the handicap races now. Number 5 is next, with the festival plate to be discussed. Qualification for this race again is for 5-year-olds and over. Last year's race with the ratings, top rated was 157, who carried 11 stone 11 pounds, down to 133. Last year's winner was Seddon, who was rated 143, and he carried 10 stone 9 pounds on the day, so he was very well handicapped coming into the festival. The first horse I want to take a look at is a regular at the Cheltenham track called Il Ridotto. All his races have been there this season with solid runs and finishing in the top 3 on each occasion. He's very consistent at the track and finished 6th in the race last year off a pound lower than what he is now. He's entered for a race at Kempton later this month over 3 miles. That would be his longest trip he'd run throughout his career. Personally, I would see how he gets on during that race, and after that, and after his race, should he run in the 3 mile handicap at Kempton next weekend. So just bear in mind, if he does run at Kempton next weekend, what if he is to be running that race, how he goes on there. The next horse, I genuinely think this horse, if going here, has a good chance. It's called Safoureux. Lately, he was scratched from the Arkle and the Turner's Novices Chase, which is a plus for him to appear in this race. He has good form as well this season, when most recently he finished 2nd behind Quilixios at Naas last month and beat a horse in 3rd that day called Mr. Policeman, who came out yesterday and won his race at Punchestown, boosting the form. He travelled well in his last race that day, as if a step up in trip is what he wants, and he stayed on well for Jack Kennedy and Gordon Elliott. The next horse I'm interested by is Juvenile, who last time out at Cheltenham was running off a career high mark. Now rated 149, he may well turn up for this race at the festival. He won the Grade 2 handicap Old Roan Chaser Aintree at the start of the season, where he sprinted away from a good field after the last few fences were omitted. He would need to improve in order to win this race, but the plate has thrown up a couple of surprises in the last 2 years, and if another shock should happen this year, it might be worth chancing Juvenile. And the last horse again is Theatre Man. Very consistent horse who has finished third or better in every race he's had. This season he has been progressive, especially over course and distance, where he came second behind Ginny's Destiny, who is a real prospect for the Turners Novices Chase this year. He's £3 higher after that race, up to 137, which would be enough for 4 of the last 5 renewals of the plate. I'd argue, though, he has more than enough to secure his place in this year's contest, and with an entry possibly made, he could be in with a place opportunity. So the 4 horses are Il Ridotto, Safoureux, Juvenile and Theatre Man. Up next is the Muir chase, and last year I backed Angel's Dawn in this race and he managed to win. Qualification for this year's for the race is 5-year-olds and up, but with no rating higher than 145. Last year's ratings, of course, were the highest 145, carried 12 stone down to 119. Last year's winner, like I said, I managed to back, which was Angel's Dawn. He was rated 131 and carried 11 stone. 4 horses in this year's race I'm really fascinated by. There's 2 for Henry de Bromhead and 2 for Nicky Henderson. I'll start with Henry de Bromhead's couple. The first is Am I Right, who has entered for the Grand National as well. He has had 2 runs this season, one at Cheltenham, finishing 4th behind the next horse I'll be talking about. The second run was at Leopardstown, where he finished 5th of 27 runners. So now rated 138, which on top of what the English handicapper might give him, he may end up being towards the top of the weights or just below the top. If he's kind enough, he may be given an extra few pounds. And the second Henry de Bromhead horse I want to take a look at is Wacker Clan. He's up to 131, the same rating as last year's winner, like I said earlier. Won at Cheltenham back in October. A career high mark for him, so not sure how much this horse can progress further. Best price now is 20 to 1, non-runner, no bet. He likes to go out in front, this horse, and makes all in his races, but it will be tough to do again, I think, for this Muir race. He's an 8-year-old and rated 131, like I said, a combination of the horse that won it last year, like I said. Now on to Nicky Henderson's pair. The first is City Chief, who is owned by the Donnellys. He's aged 7 and rated 138, but has run at Cheltenham twice this season and come up short. I'd say he needs to bounce back to his best in order to win this race, but he's not without a chance. Best price now is 33 to 1. That's a big price for him. I've backed him once at Cheltenham already this season and he did disappoint me. So I will need more positive vibes from connections in order for me to feel more optimistic about his chances. The second horse for Nicky Henderson to discuss is the fascinating 9-year-old that is Mr. Coffee. He's never won a race over fences in 13 attempts, but he did come really close to winning this race 2 years ago when just pipped at the line for first. That day he was rated 137. He's now back down to 138. The lowest he's been since that day. He is overdue a win, and at present he is 40 to 1 for this year's Muir. He didn't do too badly as well in last year's Grand National, of course, so he may not be the worst bet in this race. Look at bookmakers who are offering extra places on the day, I feel, because if they are offering 6 to 7 places on the day, then Mr. Coffee may not be the worst. The penultimate handicap is the county hurdle, the ultra competitive county hurdle. I've never managed to pick a horse to win this race. Hopefully my luck changes this year. Qualification is for 5-year-olds and over again. Last year's race with ratings, top rated was 155, which was Sharjah, I think, who carried 12 stone down to 133. Last year's winner was Favois for the Skeltons, rated 134, right on the bottom of the weights, carried 10 stone and 7 pounds. The 4 horses in this handicap I will take a look at are all owned by JP McManus. I think he'll have a big chance to win this race this time around. Last year's first horse I'll take a look at is a horse trained by Willie Mullins called Jet Langy. It was a last year's purchase from France. This horse went to Willie Mullins' yard and won his maiden hurdle in good style. Then he had his second start for his new connections in the Grade 1 novice hurdle over 2 miles at the Dublin Racing Festival, where he finished 5th, well behind the brilliant Ballyburn. Connections have taken him out of the Supreme as well, so he could become a player in this particular handicap. I don't think a 16 to 1 price is bad for this horse at the moment. So I will keep an eye on Juvenile. I think he could be a well handicapped type for the county. The second JP McManus horse now is called Risk Bell, a 5-year-old mare who came close to winning the Boodles Juvenile hurdle last year. Since that, she's won a Ferry House twice, including one Grade 3, and came 5th at the DRF earlier this month. Now rated 136, which after a few pounds more, she should get in and come close on the day. Another trained by Willie Mullins, who is the winning most trainer of the county with 6 victories. She could add the tally to 7 perhaps. Also this 5-year-olds do have good records in the race, including Stateman, who won it 2 years ago. So the trends look well, and the records look good for Risk Bell. The next JP McManus horse, number 3, is called Comfort Zone, another 5-year-old who's very likely raced over hurdles, trained this time by Joseph O'Brien, and he's won 3 of his 4 hurdle starts. His only blip came at the expense of Lossiemouth in December 2022. He's been running a lot of his races on the flat as well, but is rated 132 over hurdles. He ran at Cheltenham on Trials Day last year and won the Triumph Juvenile Trial Hurdle. So he has got course form as well, which I think is crucial. 25-1 best price for the race currently for Comfort Zone. And then the final JP McManus horse in this section is called Miraza West. He could be thrown into the county as he has been scratched from the Supreme and the Bear in Bingham, formerly known as the Ballymore. A winner of a maiden hurdle and a bumper, he did also come second behind King of Kingsfield on his first hurdle start for Willie Mullins. At the beginning of the season, many people thought this horse could be the next big thing for the Supreme at the festival, but it hasn't really worked out that way for him, so a county hurdle might not be a bad race for him to run in. Always a competitive race is the county, and I wouldn't put off anyone back in this horse. So the 4 JP McManus horses in this race I've noted are Juvenile, Risk Bell, Comfort Zone and Miraza West. We come to the last handicap of the festival, the last race in fact of the Cheltenham Festival this year. The Martin Pipe Handicap Hurdle, over 2.5 miles. The qualification is for 4-year-olds and over, which is compressed with ratings up to 145. So the last year's race ratings was from 145, who carried Limestone £12, down to 126. Last year's winner was Iroko, who rated 138 at the time, carried a Limestone and £5. The 4 horses I'll take a look at here begin with Better Days Ahead. Gordon Elliott has won this race a few times, and he may want to send a Better Days Ahead here. In the mid-130s at the moment, that may be increased with the English handicapper, but I think he could definitely be in the mix. Ran in the champion bumper last year and didn't really perform. Don't think he'll go to the Barton either, which is what he's currently entered for at the festival. Novices as well have a good record in this race, and he could be a nice one to back come the last race of the festival. The second horse is called Jaguar. Same connections as last year's winner Iroko. Should be running at Carlisle today in fact, and needs to win this race today at Carlisle. Yet to win a race so far, but did come second behind In the Waterside in his first run for his new team. After a year off of the track, which was at Aintree. Latest run was at Haydock, which wasn't great, but there was something amiss post-race according to the vet. So we don't really know how good this horse may turn out to be. That's Jaguar for JP McManus and the same trainer as last year's winner, Iroko. The third horse is trained by Dan Skelton, called Nurse Susan, a 7-year-old mare who looks to be back into good form, winning her last 2 races at Cheltenham and Lingfield respectively. Rated 135 over hurdles, she's entered for the mares and the stayers hurdle, but whether connections want to keep her in handicap company remains to be seen. They also do have another mare entered for both called West Balboa, who is higher rated, I should say, than Nurse Susan. So they may decide to keep her in the graded races and want to keep Nurse Susan in handicap. Nonetheless, I think Nurse Susan would stand a chance in this race. And the final horse to take a look at in the Martin Pipe is a horse I mentioned earlier in the episode called No Ordinary Joe. A pound lower than when finishing second in last year's race. He just bumped into a good horse on the day, like I said, called Iroko. Now I mentioned this horse during my Coral Cup piece. I just think he could go to either of the 2 races. Whichever it may be, I think he'll have a good chance. It could be the Coral Cup or the Martin Pipe. He is a bigger price currently for this race than the Coral Cup as it stands, but ultimately connections will decide which race best suits him. I don't have a massive preference myself, and I think he'll have a chance in either. So that's all the handicap races at the festival I've taken a look at, ranging from the first handicap, the Ultima handicap chase, right down to the Martin Pipe. I have skipped the Pertemps, of course, because there are some more qualified races to be run and more horses that can be qualified for the race. And obviously I backed Highland in the race, in the Pertemps final last month. So I have skipped that race in terms of looking at the handicap races this year. The next video on the Cheltenham Countdown YouTube channel will be on the 4th of March, where I'll give my final 2 anti-post picks for Cheltenham. And then 3 days later on the 7th will be my first preview day of the festival. Day 1 preview will be on the Thursday. Day 2 will be on the Friday, the 8th of March. The 9th of March will be the 3rd day's preview. And then the final day's preview of Cheltenham will be on the Sunday before the festival. I can't wait for the festival to start now. I'll be there, like I said, on every single day of the festival this year. Thanks for watching this episode, by the way. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to. But I've really enjoyed giving you my handicaps, not my selections yet, but my handicap thoughts and horses to discuss in those races. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the 4th of March.